The story begins with a powerful sorceress. While casting a spell, she realized that her wand was irreparably damaged. The place where it was located contained incredible magical power, capable of destroying even the most powerful weapons. After the explosion, nothing remained but ashes. Except one thing: a successful summoning. Meanwhile, a deafening snore could be heard from one house. The young man suddenly woke up, not immediately understanding why the door to his house was wide open. Bright sunlight hit his face, and the wind ruffled his hair. He sat up, squinting, and saw before him a forest. Turning in different directions, he could not understand what was happening. He had simply fallen asleep in his own home, and although the building was still behind him, he felt that the world around him was no longer the same. Looking up at the sky, he noticed dragons flying over his house. Dragons! Only now did it begin to dawn on him that he was no longer in his own world. Memories of the previous evening surfaced vaguely. After the end of the workday, his colleagues dragged him to a bar, where everything quickly degenerated into a banal drinking bout. When he got home, he didn't even make it to bed. He collapsed right at the threshold, and now his head was splitting, as if orcs were dancing in it. And he dreamed of only one thing: to fall asleep again. And then he heard someone's voices talking about powerful energy. One of them mentioned the devil. The hero froze. Who was saying that? He was warned that magical clusters are dangerous. So dangerous that they cannot be approached. Looking outside, he thought the voices were too loud. People were talking about power, which was much more than they expected in this place. To touch it would bring disaster upon themselves. His head was still pounding when he saw the girls. They were wearing unusual outfits and pointy hats, as if they had just walked out of a fantasy convention. They were waving magic wands, and one of them reported that the device for finding magical artifacts kept beeping. The hero, looking at them, wondered, were they cosplayers? Suddenly, one of the girls jumped up and rushed towards him, declaring that she would do it. The others tried to stop her, calling her a princess, and our hero at that moment thought that his only mission was to sleep. These noisy fashionistas were bothering him, and something had to be done about it. So he shouted at them to be quiet. Didn't they realize what time it was? His scream was so loud that it lifted the leaves from the trees. The girls froze in horror, not understanding what had happened. The next second, they were thrown back with such force that they crashed into a tree. The hero looked at this in complete shock. They really flew back from his scream? For the girls, it seemed incredible. The guy had knocked them over with just one voice. That meant he was a real monster. He stepped towards them. The girls trembled, realizing that they had to retreat. The princess tried to rise, but her legs were shaking so badly that she couldn't stand up. As he approached, she pressed herself against the tree in terror. Fear took over. She burst into tears and wet herself. The girls began to apologize, repeating that they did not want to disturb him. The young man was stunned. Did they really wet themselves out of fear? He tried to justify himself. He didn't want to scare them, he just wanted them to shut up. Then he came closer to the girl and, trying to take off her hat, asked where they were. He wanted to understand everything. The girl, trembling, pulled the hat back on. Tears glistened in her eyes, and she asked in surprise how he could not know. After all, his house stood in the very center of the magical anomaly. The young man was taken aback. He did not understand anything. The girl explained that he was surrounded by magic, that he himself was the bearer of power, and asked, did he really not notice what he had done? The hero just grinned. Complete nonsense, no doubt. Then another girl came up and told the princess that she couldn't continue like this. She had to leave. She waved her wand and activated emergency teleportation. A flash of light, and the girls disappeared. The hero stood, staring into space. They really had teleported. He looked back at the forest around him. He dismissed them with his voice. He had truly entered another world. It was incredible. But at that moment, he did not notice how someone inside the house addressed him. From the clouds of smoke, a voice was heard calling him, Master. The guy stood on the threshold and finally understood with clarity. He was in another world, and it was simply amazing. He began to think that it was time to adapt to the new conditions, because thoughts about the differences between this world and his previous life, as well as the skills necessary for survival, did not give him peace. Suddenly, he rushed into the kitchen, anxiously checking to see if his food was still there. Opening the usual shelf with supplies, he was relieved to see that everything was still there. His wardrobe was in its place. Familiar clothes hung in the closet, and the same single bed stood next to him. A setting that had not changed for a whole decade. This constancy gave him peace of mind. He was sincerely glad that nothing had changed in the house. He then began to change his clothes, and after that, jumped onto the bed that stood in the family home, which was 6 decades old. He felt safe in this dwelling. As soon as he thought about it again, his eyelids became heavy, and the young man, hoping for rest, allowed himself to doze off. But the silence was broken again by sharp cries. He opened his eyes, confused, and tried to figure out how much time had passed. It all seemed too familiar. Was it all happening again? Somewhere nearby, girls were running away from a huge monster in panic. None of them could believe that they had been transported straight into the dragon's lair. The young man heard a voice that could not possibly be here. It was the princess, and in her desperate cry there was an order to use the last of her magic to lead the monster away from the city. Her companions, shouting, insisted that she save herself, promising to detain the beast. They stood before the monster, feeling its immense power on them. Their bodies trembled. The girls tried to decide where to run. Towards the house of that strange guy they had just met. Or away, because the dragon was right behind them. The princess refused to leave the battlefield. Recalling that she was a representative of royal blood, she claimed that her duty was to lead people into battle, not to flee. The girls, still trying to convince the princess to retreat, felt trouble approaching. The dragon opened its mouth and released a fiery flame that engulfed everything around. And, of course, this was happening in the immediate vicinity of the young man's house. He pressed his hands to his ears, thinking that the noise was too much for him. Meanwhile, the girls activated a magical shield, trying to stop the flow of flames. The protective barrier began to crack, threatening to collapse. The young man grabbed his head, feeling the pain intensify. At this time, the girls tried to persuade the princess to leave, assuring her that they could handle it themselves. They tried to reason with her again, but the princess stood firm. She had already made her choice and would not abandon her subjects. There was another crash. The young man, hearing this, left the house, unable to contain his irritated cry. Turning to that same girl, he reminded her that he actually wanted to sleep. At that moment, the girls realized that something huge was approaching them. They quickly realized that it was a tornado, and they needed to escape immediately. The whirlwind was so powerful that it lifted both the girls and the dragon himself into the air, and then threw everyone back to the ground with a roar. When the girls came to, they tried to comprehend what had happened. The young man, seeing them lying down, suddenly thought that perhaps he had shouted too loudly and caused a tornado. He came closer to see if they were okay. Seeing the young man approaching, the girls felt his aura. It became clear to them that they could not cope with this presence. The next second, fear seized them again, and they could not restrain themselves. The young man, watching what was happening, noted with annoyance that his lawn was ruined. He felt a little embarrassed, because it was his voice that had brought the girls to this state. They, trembling, thanked him for defeating the dragon, and cautiously asked what punishment they should suffer. The princess stood before him, begging him to spare her companions. If the young man wanted retribution, she was ready to give her life. He exhaled heavily, completely unsure of what they were talking about. He didn't care about the girl's life. He just wanted them to get the dragon away from his home. The girls were puzzled as to how this was possible. After all, such a monster could not be defeated without a squad of at least 10 adventurers. Just one scale was worth a fortune, and the heart had magical properties, more valuable than any jewelry. While telling this story, they asked why he was giving away something so valuable so easily. The young man replied that he had no use for this giant. If they wanted it, let them sell it or throw it away. He also asked them to stay away from his house for a while, since he was quite tired and needed rest. The princess realized that there was no malice or hidden intentions in the young man's words. Agreeing, she took out her magic wand and cast a spell to make the dragon rise into the air. She then introduced herself as Dainia Prussia Medisun, the second princess of the Kingdom of Prussia. She promised to repay the debt and asked that her name be remembered. The young man watched the girls and the dragon fly away, feeling unbearably tired. Returning to the house, he closed the door tightly and, stretching, thought with relief that now, perhaps, he would finally be allowed to sleep. Burying his face, as it seemed to the young man, in a pillow, he suddenly heard someone insistently calling his name. However, hugging something soft, he realized that he was not lying on a bed at all, but on someone's lap. He was overcome by a strange, almost magical feeling of comfort and warmth. Recognizing that the voice was calling him to dinner, the hero opened his eyes and noticed that his hands were touching someone's legs. He rose abruptly from his knees and looked up in confusion, trying to figure out who was in front of him. An unfamiliar girl was leaning over him with a kind smile. The stranger calmly said that the food was ready, addressing him respectfully as the owner of the house. The young man did not take his eyes off her, while trying to remember how this was even possible. He was sure that he had closed all the doors, and there was no one in the house except him. She explained that the entrance was indeed locked, and no one except him could open it. If her words were true, then one question remained. How did she get inside in the first place? The girl politely asked to be allowed to introduce herself first. Her name was Sakura, and she was a spirit connected to this house since ancient times. Decades after her birth, she finally met the one she had long been waiting for, a representative of the family that once cared for her. Sakura admitted that she hesitated to approach him for a long time because she felt embarrassed. The hero was surprised and asked who gave her the name, because Sakura is a blooming cherry blossom. And then it occurred to him that the supporting structures of the house were indeed made of cherry wood. The girl's eyes lit up when she heard that he remembered it. She looked at him with delight as he told her that his grandfather had told him about it. When the hero was a child, his grandfather explained that cherry wood was rarely used in construction, but their house was an exception. It was built from it. Looking back at the tree, the young man could hardly believe that such a lovely girl could live in his house. Hearing the word cute, Sakura beamed and thanked him, and then added that most likely the master was hungry after all the events he had experienced. So she suggested that he try something she had prepared herself, using ingredients found in the refrigerator. Seeing real home-cooked food in front of him, the young man did not immediately believe what was happening. After thinking for a while, he asked how it happened that the food was warm, since the ingredients were clearly taken from the refrigerator. Sakura explained with a smile that she had restored the electricity supply with the help of magic, and also organized the water supply using underground sources. Sitting down at the table, the hero couldn't fully comprehend how real all this magic was. Sakura just nodded and reminded him that the food would get cold if he didn't start eating right away. Having thanked for the treat, the young man greedily began to eat, sweeping away everything that was on his plate. He was full as never before and did not forget to express his gratitude to Sakura. She happily accepted the praise, and the hero, having already realized that he had ended up in another world, asked the question that had tormented him from the very beginning. Why was he called here? Sakura explained that the reason was in the house itself. The hero had lived there long enough to be imbued with its magic. The house was not simple. It was a real magical knot. The young man immediately remembered the words of the princess, who also mentioned the peculiarity of this place. Sakura confirmed. They know how much power is contained in these walls. Moreover, both Sakura and the young man had a higher level of magic than usual. She explained that since birth, the young man had lived in the Dragon's Artery, a place where magic literally permeates everything. And over the years, he himself had become a vessel for this power. She asked if he now realized what she was talking about. At that moment, the hero finally understood where those powerful gusts of wind were coming from. Sakura confirmed his guess. He really is capable of a lot. He just needs to train a little and reveal his magical potential. Pushing back his chair and getting up from the table, the young man suggested moving the training outside. He did not want to risk Sakura's safety. She looked at him in surprise, but immediately thanked him for his concern. The hero asked to wait a little while to change before going out. Having changed his clothes, the young man went out into the courtyard with Sakura, where a sad picture appeared before his eyes. The entire area was dotted with craters and potholes. He immediately realized that this was the work of those same girls. Naturally, the hero was extremely unhappy about this, but before he could voice his irritation, Sakura gently asked him where he would like to begin his training. Remembering the recent situation with the refrigerator, the young man thought it would be useful to be able to create food. However, initially he wanted to fill the craters in the yard, although food still seemed more important. Sakura agreed and added that she knew a way to get more food. At that very moment, she easily created a juicy apple out of thin air. Seeing the result, the young man could not hide his surprise. Sakura explained that they could plant seeds and grow apple trees, which would make the yard green again. The boy frowned, wondering how long it would take, and asked her about the growth time of trees. The girl only smiled and assured that magic could significantly speed up this process. The boy looked at Sakura with interest, and she said that since he would be using magic for the first time, she would act as a mediator and tune herself to his magical wave. Her power would be synchronized with his, and he would be able to direct it as he wished. However, The boy did not fully understand what she was talking about. Sakura explained that he would need to touch her and focus on visualizing the tree growing. These words caused the young man a slight embarrassment. He did not know where exactly he could touch. His gaze involuntarily slid over her attractive figure, and he tried to pull himself together. Sakura, noticing this, leaned over and said that she could use his touch on her head. The hero realized that he was thinking too much, and nodded, agreeing. When his hand touched her head, Sakura suddenly sobbed. He was alarmed by her expression, which changed abruptly. She asked him to focus on the image of a growing tree, so that she could direct his energy. The young man closed his eyes and began to imagine how a small seed was growing from the ground, slowly turning into a tree, while continuing to hold his palm on the girl's head. Sakura felt how an incredibly powerful stream of power emanating from him was flaring up in her. Having gained access to the energy, the girl directed it into the ground, concentrating her effort. A green sprout immediately appeared from the soil. The hero was overjoyed and pointed out to Sakura the plant that had appeared. It sprouted almost instantly. This gave him the idea that he could immediately visualize a mature tree, skipping the initial stages of growth. He glanced at Sakura, who sat motionless, trying to come to her senses. Heat was spreading through her body, and, coming closer, the hero carefully asked if everything was okay. The girl admitted that she was simply shocked, and offered to continue. Touching her head again, the young man began to concentrate on the image of the tree growing to its full height, believing that he would succeed. Sakura, absorbing his energy, could not believe how much of it there was. The flow of power was much more powerful than what was required for a simple task. Her body began to have difficulty coping with this excess pressure. It was too much, even for her. Just as the girl was about to ask them to stop, a full-fledged tree suddenly grew out of the ground in front of them. Sakura felt pure bliss. His power penetrated her completely, causing a feeling of euphoria. Meanwhile, the young man, not noticing the girl's condition, watched in amazement at the tree, on the branches of which juicy apples were already ripening. The next moment, the young man saw Sakura suddenly fall to the ground, and he froze in surprise, not understanding if everything was okay with her. The girl herself was shocked by what was happening. She had not expected anything like this. Gradually coming to her senses, she thanked the young man and praised him for his success. Then she picked one of the apples, handed it to the hero, and treated him to it with a smile. Now the young man was in the palm of her hand, figuratively and literally. A little embarrassed, the hero noted that they had grown this apple together. Sakura happily accepted his words. Taking his first bite, the young man was surprised. The apple was unusually sweet and juicy. The taste was magnificent, and he enjoyed every moment. He was beginning to understand how to use magic properly. Sakura confirmed that he had amazing powers hidden within him and suggested turning the entire courtyard into an orchard. The hero enthusiastically agreed. He understood that they needed to plant even more trees. Sakura confidently added that she was always at his service. And suddenly a creature flashed in the sky, flew up quickly, and grabbed Sakura, carrying her away. The hero only watched what was happening in shock, not having time to understand what exactly had happened. Meanwhile, another girl was struggling to carry a huge sack filled with coins. They had gotten over 3,000 silver for the dragon, a substantial sum that now lay before her. The princess believed that she should bring this money to the one who had defeated the monster, because she no longer wanted to send her people to that cursed place. However, due to a lack of energy, she could not use magic to carry it, and was forced to carry everything by hand. Making her way through the forest, she suddenly noticed a strange creature in the sky. It was covered with rainbow scales and was small in size. The princess immediately understood. It was one of the great dragons. This type of dragon was considered immune to magic and significantly superior to its normal counterparts. The girl guessed that it could have been attracted by the local magical anomaly. At the same time, our hero could not stop thinking about Sakura, who was carried away by this very dragon. He clearly understood that if the dragon took his home, it would mean failure. As the owner, he simply could not allow this. He had to save Sakura immediately. The dragon carried the girl further and further. The young man came to the conclusion that the only way out was to use magic. He knew that he had to attack accurately, without hitting the girl. Grasping the tree, he wondered if he could use magic without Sakura. The answer came to him by itself. All he needed was to imagine the action in his mind. He screamed, calling the apple tree into action. At that moment, the tree quickly stretched upwards like a snake and delivered a precise blow to the dragon. And, In surprise, the dragon unclenched its claws, releasing the girl. The hero realized that he really could control magic. Sakura began to fall rapidly from a height, unable to stop her fall. The hero wanted to use the tree again, but realized that he would not have time. He himself had to rush to her aid, otherwise she would die. And the next moment, breaking through the foliage, he caught her right in his arms before she touched the ground. They found themselves in a very awkward situation, for which the young man immediately apologized, explaining that he only wanted to save her. Sakura thanked him, blushing slightly. She then informed him that the dragon was most likely going to attack. The hero wondered, what else did the monster need? And then Sakura suggested that perhaps it wanted to settle in this place of power and create its lair here. At that moment, the hero's stomach began to rumble treacherously. He mentally cursed himself for such an inopportune moment for hunger. Sakura couldn't believe her ears when she heard this. Could he really be thinking about food in such a critical situation? But then she realized that he probably spent too much energy on the trees. Addressing her master, Sakura stated seriously that, according to the information she had gathered, dragon meat should have an excellent taste. The hero was amazed at how calmly she spoke about this. Looking at the lying dragon, the young man noticed the strange rainbow hue of its scales and wondered if it was poisonous. But at the same time, he noted that there would be more than enough food for two. He understood. The dragon attacked first, so there was nothing to regret. Having made the final decision, he seriously told Sakura that he intended to eat this dragon. Now that Sakura was safe, the boy focused completely on his magic. He felt the power building up inside him, ready to burst out, and he screamed, loudly, furiously, with full abandon. The attack almost hit its target, but the dragon deftly dodged. The hero thought that perhaps the enemy was too far away for a direct blow. Sakura noticed that the dragon began to retreat. The hero was worried. If it flew away, it could attack someone else. But the distance between them was too great. Sakura then explained that shouting alone was not enough. The energy had to be directed with precision, visualizing the target in the mind. This was the basis of attack control. Taking her advice, the young man decided to try again. He screamed again, this time directing a magical pulse straight towards the dragon and demanding that it come down to the ground. The dragon was caught in a whirlwind, and the next moment there was a powerful explosion. The princess, who was nearby, tried to understand what had happened, but the blast wave caught her too. The girl flew to the side, knocked off her feet. She thought in despair why every time she came here something ridiculous happened to her. The hero was pleased. The magic worked. He was convinced that focusing really made spells stronger. Looking at the defeated dragon, he asked Sakura what to do with this colossus now. Sakura confidently said that she would take care of everything. She had knowledge of both cutting and magical processing of such creatures. The hero was glad to hear this. He was really lucky to have such an assistant. He thought that he now had the best home in this world. After some time, Sakura served him a steak made from the meat of a rainbow dragon. The hero was shocked. The meat melted in his mouth, was incredibly tender, and he could eat it forever. In response, Sakura proudly showed him a magical refrigerator located next to the newly grown apple trees. The young man, delighted, said that she seemed to be able to do anything. The girl, embarrassed, denied this, but sincerely thanked him for saving her. The hero thought, being self-sufficient in this world sounded tempting. At this time, the princess, waking up after the magic strike, realized that he was the cause again. Embarrassed and realizing that she had wet herself again, she decided to come back later. She could not appear before him in such a state as had happened before. Meanwhile, the boy continued to grow apple trees, and Sakura watched the process with approval. She praised him, noting how confidently he was doing it. The hero himself noticed how easy it was to grow trees with magic. Then Sakura suggested holding the next lesson. With a smile, she said that she would become his guide again, and asked him to transfer magical energy to her by touch. The girl looked especially charming leaning against the tree. The hero, looking at her, noted to himself how beautiful she was. Touching the girl's shoulders, the hero began to transmit magical energy to her. From the outside, this scene looked a little strange, but the very next moment, something appeared before them. Unusual plant. The young man looked at it carefully, not understanding what it was in front of him. Then Sakura explained. It was a wooden golem, a small but very useful assistant in collecting apples. The hero realized with surprise that with the help of magic, even something like this could be created. Suddenly, Sakura became alert. She felt danger approaching and turned to the master. She said that they needed to become one immediately. The hero didn't immediately understand what they were talking about. They lived in the house together, but he had only recently begun to see Sakura. Before, she couldn't take physical form in his world. Perhaps it was the heat, he thought. He thanked her for her help, and she looked at him, slightly embarrassed. The hero felt that perhaps this day had become special, and turned to Sakura with a serious expression. At that moment, the girl asked him to close his eyes. He obeyed and concentrated, waiting for her to continue. Then Sakura touched his forehead with hers. It was difficult to concentrate. They were too close. He heard her breathing, felt her heartbeat. The boundary between their bodies was erased. Sakura was warm, and the young man noted to himself that he would have to get used to this feeling. When he opened his eyes, he was overcome with euphoria. Mysterious symbols were floating in front of him, and he tried to figure out where they were. Sakura explained that they were watching the territory of his house from above. Now he could see what she saw. That was why they needed to merge into one. The boy had no idea what the spirits of the houses were capable of. Now he understood what Sakura had meant by those words. Although, as it turned out, they had completely different ideas about such a union. She had said that she had noticed the approach of 65 magical creatures, and therefore decided to unite with him. Meanwhile, the monsters were approaching. They felt that this place was filled with magical energy, and decided to take it over for their future clan. At the head of them was Gallo-Garu, the lord of the forest where Daiichi's house was located. Turning to his warriors, he made sure that everyone was assembled. This place was to be their new home. He reminded his soldiers how they fought during the previous capture of the city and promised to throw a feast after the victory. As the squads prepared to attack, one of the leaders reminded them that the goal was the complete destruction of the resistance. No one should be left alive. The connection between them was established telepathically. The commands were given without words. The second squad was advancing. The third was preparing to attack. The fourth was also moving forward. The fifth was already entering the battle. And the sixth was supporting the general onslaught. Having divided into 6 squads, they headed towards the hero's house. He watched their movements on the map and realized these creatures were really aiming for his house. Rubbing his fists, the young man firmly declared that he would not allow the invasion. Let them try. He did not think that everything would end well for them. It was time to show who was boss here.
I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel, liked and wrote a comment, rating this manga on a scale from 1 to 10. Your opinion is very important to me. This will help me better understand what my audience is interested in, because you are really important to me.
When the wolves went to attack the hero's house, their commander gave orders to the squads, and everyone understood that they needed to wait for a signal from the boss. Soon the boss shouted the command to attack and destroy the enemies. The elite squads quickly dealt with their enemies, thanks to telepathic communication and coordinated work. One of the wolves thought that the enemies could only pray to their gods. The wolf licked his lips devilishly, anticipating the taste of victory. Everyone went on the offensive, and the hero watched this closely, realizing that the enemies were already very close to his home. Any fool would have guessed this, he thought. He calculated that there were only 65 enemies, and wondered if he could repel them all alone. Sakura asked the master to use her powers, because they now acted as a single organism. She promised to create traps if magic passed through her. The hero agreed to her plan. The young man reported that the enemy had 6 squads. Turning to Sakura, he trusted the girl again, who asked him to rely on her, turning to the master. At the moment when the wolves went on the attack, approaching the hero's house, some stopped at the apple trees, and soon realized that the tree had begun to move. The hero gave the command to the golems to rise up. Soon a tree golem rose from the ground in front of the wolves. The wolves retreated when they saw him. There were 6 of these golems, 1 for each squad. Looking at the golems, the wolves tried to understand what it was and were scared. They shouted to the commander that there was a living magical creature in front of them, and realized that it was a golem. The commander noted that it takes a lot of magical energy to create a normal human-sized golem, but this one is gigantic and keeps growing. Everyone thought it was a dream or an illusion. They were broadcasting through the comms that everyone had a huge golem and they needed help. The commander realized that the enemy was trapped and was the first to attack. The hero did not lag behind. This was his territory, and he did not need destroyers. Turning to the golems, he ordered them to clear it of enemies. The golems attacked the wolves, who retreated under their onslaught. The wolves were defeated. Sakura praised the master, noting that he was excellent at controlling golems. The hero thought that these wooden defenders had done a great job. At that moment, his stomach growled. Everyone realized that the boy was too exhausted by magic, and it was time for a snack. Sakura noticed that he probably hadn't even had breakfast today. This meant that it was time to cook him something tasty. The girl smiled, looking at the young man, and the hero, seeing her happy face, thanked her for her constant care. The golem lovers in the city were very surprised to see what was happening. They soon realized that the hero had finished his kicking. As he walked through the forest, he thought about what he liked about this world. There is a lot of greenery. Over time, he realized that a whole week had already passed since he got here. Looking at the sky and seeing a dragon in front of him, the hero remembered how in the previous world he left home at 6 in the morning and barely made it to the last train from work. He got used to the new life here. Returning home, he saw that Sakura was waiting for him there. The girl was glad that the young man had returned. They had monsters trying to get to the house. He knew he had to forget his previous words. He was still not used to uninvited guests. Holding Sakura's hand tightly, the hero asked her to explain if these were the same guys who had recently attacked them, remembering the wolves. Seeing them, he tried to understand who was with them. A man in a robe walked next to them, his face hidden. They were dressed differently and there were fewer of them. Maybe they didn't come for a fight, the hero thought. If they showed hostility, he could activate the traps. Daichi came out of the house and greeted his recent enemies, asking why they were here again. The wolves thought that they were seeing the real magical aura of the king. Kneeling, they addressed their king. The clan of wolfmen ruled this demonic forest. Chief Garu stood before them, telling them that they revered the hero as a king. The chief then pointed to a cloaked stranger and said that he was giving him his younger sister as an offering. The stranger removed his robe, and a naked girl appeared before them, asking to be used to restore their appetite. The hero was confused. Why was the girl naked, and why did he suddenly become their king? The girl was called a real she-wolf, but without a tail and ears she was no different from an ordinary one. He didn't understand why he had to eat her, or what the wolf meant. The chieftain said that if the girl did not suit the hero, he could eat him himself. The girl had great magical energy, and by eating her, the hero would replenish his reserves. The wolf asked the heroes to eat her, but to spare the rest of the clan. The hero did not even suspect that magic could be drawn in this way. However, he was not going to eat the she-wolf, thinking that the leader had mixed everything up. Hearing this, the chief was taken aback and asked what the hero would like to do then. The young man did not want to be a king at all, much less eat the chieftain's sister. He simply wanted to live in peace and quiet. The wolves were silent in surprise, and then someone dared to ask if the hero would forgive the attack on his territory. They lost and ran away, and the hero could do with them as he saw fit. Hearing this, he decided to help the girl get dressed. He ordered them to never attack people again. That was exactly what he wanted. The girl was surprised by the young man's concern. The wolf looked at him silently, not believing in the leniency shown to the defeated. The brother hugged his sister, glad that she was okay, and she reciprocated his feelings. The hero said that despite their appearance, they were still people, and asked them to remember his order. The wolf continued to beg to become king or accept the offering. He showed all the clan's reserves and asked to accept them. Having looked at the gifts, the hero thought about it. It was tempting, but having chosen several bags, he decided that this was enough and asked to take the rest back to their families. He took only a few bags. The wolves thought he didn't like their gift, but the young man explained that it was because there were only 2 of them, and Sakura was watching her figure, and what they took was enough. The wolves were pleased and noted that Lady Sakura was in great shape. The wolves wanted to honor the new king and apologize once again for what happened. Seeing off the guests, the hero thought that he could finally return home. The guests were too noisy. Now he understood that he really was a king for them. Sakura said that she would use the gifts to make a stew. The hero was happy to hear this, but thought that it was not proper for the Wolf King to gain weight so casually. In the kingdom of Mix, the princess approached the hero to give him the coins she was holding in her hands. She was determined to pay him back. At this time, the hero and Sakura were walking along the field and suddenly saw an unusual fruit, a golden apple. Taking an apple from the tree, he wondered if it was rare and edible, carefully examining the fruit. Sakura also found one. They decided to try it together. The apple turned out to be very sweet and juicy. The hero felt that something was wrong with the fruit. Their bodies started to burn and they couldn't understand what was happening. The hero realized that it was a wave of excitement that none of them could contain. Unable to bear it, he turned to Sakura, and she was ready to listen to him. He said that from the first meeting he wanted to tell her something, but they were interrupted. The hero wondered if she had heard his words and tried to ask. At that moment they saw from above the very birds they had been watching. The birds discussed what they knew about the king's ban on flying here. One of them called the other a disgrace, but the second replied that she had seen nothing and did not know anyone who could harm her. The heroes, watching this, could not believe that dragons actually talk. Sakura said that she had heard similar conversations too. She noticed that the apples weakly emitted dragon magic. Perhaps after biting them, they began to understand their speech. This tree grew on the spot where a great dragon was killed, and the dragon's blood soaked the apples with magic. Apparently, it mixed with the energy of Sakura and Daichi, hence the strong effect. Hearing this, the hero thought that the news was interesting. He wondered if they could get other magical effects from the blood of different animals, but decided to check it later. At that moment, the golem brought the princess back to the heroes. The princess, bound by the golem, appeared before the hero. When the young man saw her, he couldn't believe his eyes. The girl, covering herself, said that he probably didn't remember her, but the hero remembered everything and asked how long she was going to ruin his lawn. Noticing that she was embarrassed again at the sight of him, the princess apologized and admitted that she was ashamed. She came to repay the debt to the hero. A person living in a world filled with magic named Daineya did not necessarily call herself by a title. The hero thought that she had never called him by name, perhaps because he had never introduced himself. He asked why she had come. The girl replied that she lost them when the monster grabbed her. Returning, she took the bags of money and thanked the hero for protecting her from the dragon. She placed 2 bags of gold in front of him and said that this was his share after selling the dragon. 3,000 silver coins, almost 3 million gold. Hearing this, the hero realized that this was the local currency, and the girl explained that this money would last for a whole year. The hero thought that now he had a golem that could handle tasks well. The man turned to the princess, and she said that after saving the hero's life, she would definitely return. The hero realized that the girl was conscientious. The princess admitted that this was perhaps her only advantage, besides her talent for magic, which she was still using clumsily. At that moment, a dragon flew over them, preparing to attack. Another dragon joined them, telling them about a hero, the one who ate the dragon. The king also wanted to meet him one-on-one, but the dragons looked at the hero and decided that he was as tall as a stone. The hero watched them carefully as they discussed that he had killed their brother, who was already dead. They thought that his meat must be very tasty, considering the boy's magic. The hero warned the girls that the dragons wanted to eat them. He wondered how many dragons it would take to defeat him. The princess said that there were at least 10 dragons here. She became scared again and admitted that they might be finished. The hero tried to understand why so many dragons had gathered here. What was going on? The princess, turning to him, thought that he should know. After all, dragons appeared every time the girl came here. The hero confirmed this with a grin, but the girl was offended and asked not to blame her. She looked away, crying. The hero sighed heavily. After all, he was just joking, but there was no time for regrets. He said that they needed to prepare for battle. The princess realized with horror that he was going to fight the dragons alone. One of the dragons, seeing the hesitation of the others, rushed to attack first. He shouted that his army was already moving after him. The hero, watching what was happening, warned the others. The dragons began the attack. The princess cast the spell Fire Spear and attacked the dragon. Flames flared in the sky. For a moment, it seemed to her that she had succeeded, but the dragon reappeared, unharmed. The princess realized that even her best move had done him no harm. This was clearly no ordinary enemy, and there were more than a dozen like him in the sky. Returning to his own, the dragon mockingly said that he had warned the others. These people were insignificant. He pointed to the hero, whom they had initially feared, but now decided that in vain. He seemed afraid. Having cleared their doubts, the dragons coordinated their attack and rushed forward. The hero saw the whole flock flying towards them. He shouted to the girls that everything was bad. The dragons were attacking in earnest. He stood in front of the princess, covering her with himself, and ordered her to take care of the baby dragons. But the princess was not going to stand aside. She reminded that she was still a princess and could fight too. But before that, she asked to be spanked on the bottom. That's what her mentor did when she couldn't concentrate. The hero couldn't believe his ears. What kind of teacher was this? What kind of training did he have? Nevertheless, having gathered his courage, he declared that since she herself asked, he would fulfill it. And, in the name of salvation, he slapped her. But he immediately added, "Let her not call him a pervert later." After the spanking, the princess felt her mind clear. The method, oddly enough, worked. She felt her body catch fire, not with pain, but with magical energy filling her. The dragons were already very close. Their attack threatened to sweep away everything. The princess raised her wand, filled it with magic, and released the spell. The dragons felt the heat. The blow was powerful. The girl saw that it worked. She felt the power inside her. In that moment, she hoped that it would be enough. As if to confirm this, there was an explosion. One of the dragons collapsed. The princess couldn't believe it. She did it. The hero and Sakura looked at her in amazement. One of the remaining dragons screamed that the boy had died from one blow. The rest realized that the king was right. These people were not to be trifled with. They decided not to approach this territory anymore. The dragons flew away. The heroes, watching the fallen enemy, could not believe in victory. The princess, putting on the hat that flew off in the battle, said with a trembling voice that this was legendary class magic. She had never managed to do something like this before. The hero just looked at her silently, not understanding what she was talking about. The princess thought, perhaps her magic had become so strong only because the young man had shared his energy with her. But now all her strength was exhausted. She fell to her knees. Looking at the hero, she was surprised. He looked as if he had not done anything at all. The young man himself didn't know how to explain it. Perhaps he was just too good. However, it didn't matter now. He looked at the huge dragon lying on his plot and sighed. "Can you get rid of the corpse?" he asked. "I don't know how you did it, but you managed. You deserve a reward. It would be sad if you refused the prize." The princess asked in surprise. "I killed the dragon, but they are expensive. Do you really want to give it to me?" And then, a little embarrassed, she added, "You're not angry, are you? I broke the order and came here." The boy remembered telling her to stay away. He instinctively looked back. Sakura was standing there. But the next second he realized that there was no point in getting angry. "It doesn't matter," he said, "as long as I live in this house. This is all I have." Sakura, noticing how he softened, smiled. She was glad that he had become kinder. The princess, seeing that he was not angry, thanked him sincerely. He did not understand why. "It just became easier," she said, "to know that you do not hold a grudge." She had no energy left. She promised to return for the dragon at night and hoped to see the young man again. "Only next time, without a flock of dragons," he said. "I hope so too," she answered with a smile, leaving. Looking at the dragon's body, the hero ordered the golem to take it to where the girl could teleport. Sakura approved of this. The carcass attracted too much attention. After the battle, the hero thought it would be nice to eat. Everything that happened seemed like a fairy tale to him. Sakura, trying to please him, reminded him, "We still have pudding." Meanwhile, the princess was preparing for teleportation. When she arrived at the designated place, she saw the dragon's carcass in front of her and was surprised. Why didn't they get rid of it, but carefully left it for her? Night fell. The girl decided that she would simply take the body and go home. Activating the magic, she disappeared along with the dragon, heading to the Prussian castle, as promised. A moment later, she appeared in the courtyard of the castle. Sighing, she lowered her body. A knight approached her and, noticing the carcass, asked, "What is this?" Seeing who was in front of him, he straightened up. In front of him was the magic captain. The princess answered calmly, "It's a dragon. I burned it with one shot. Sell it and send the money to the treasury." The knight examined the carcass and could tell from its scales that it was a high-level magical dragon, capable of reflecting spells. "You are incredible, Your Highness," he said. "You killed it alone?" "I didn't say I was alone," the princess replied. "There was a man with me. He gave me some of his magical energy." The knight became wary. "He used an add-on? But that requires a ritual." "I know," she replied, "but he simply touched me and it worked." Stroking the dragon's scales, the princess thought out loud. Perhaps he can be given the rank of a legendary or super high-class magician. The knight could not believe it. Someone so strong and lives in that forest? He also reported that the Dragon King had not been seen in the area recently. This seemed suspicious. The princess remained silent. Together they headed to the castle. Morning came. It was quiet in the young man's house. But suddenly, the sound of footsteps. A girl, who looked like a witch, was approaching the house. In her hand, a cane. She stopped at the door and said, "So, this is where the man who eats dragons lives." During another walk in the garden with Sakura, the main character noticed an unfamiliar girl carefully studying the branches of an apple tree. The young man noted to himself that it was the first time he had seen the intruder, who looked so charming. Turning to her, he asked if she was lost. But instead of a direct answer, she asked him whether apples really grew on the tree. He followed her gaze and explained that they were golden apples, although, in essence, they were still apples. The girl admitted with interest that she had now learned something new during her journey. The protagonist, watching her, thought, if she had set out on a journey at such an age, then in this world it was considered quite normal. Introducing herself as Hestia, the stranger suddenly interrupted the moment with sounds coming from her stomach. She was sure that these were just strange noises, not even realizing that she was hungry. Looking closely at the girl, the hero thought about her condition. He asked Sakura if it would harm her if she ate the apple, and suggested checking what her abilities were before doing anything. Sakura, having studied the girl's aura, noticed that it contained a large amount of magical power. Despite her young age, she had outstanding monistic potential. The hero, having heard this, decided to see how the magic apple would affect her body. Having convinced himself of the guest's high magical potential, he handed her the fruit. She was genuinely surprised that the stranger was willing to share it with her. Taking this as a kind gesture, Hestia gratefully accepted the treat and decisively took a bite of the apple. As soon as she tasted it, her eyes widened in amazement, and she finished the fruit in no time, after which she asked for more with slight embarrassment. The hero wondered how hungry she must have been if she swallowed it all in a second. At this time, Sakura quietly laughed, looking at the girl with a kind smile. The hero noticed that the spirit of the house seemed to like children, and she was clearly in a good mood. Sakura thought of her little master, who was always full of energy and fun. The hero nodded to himself, agreeing he really was quite restless as a child. However, it seemed a little strange to him to discuss his own childhood with the spirit that personified his home. Meanwhile, Hestia, with a satisfied look, noted that the apple was unusually tasty, and she even felt a little full. The hero sighed with relief, gently stroked her head, and noted that, despite her age, she clearly did not know some complex words. He then turned to Sakura, asking if it was time to go back, and inquired where Hestia herself was headed. Thanking her for the wonderful fruit, the girl said she was going home. The hero was pleased to meet her, and Hestia replied that she was also pleased to see her, and was sure that their paths would cross again. After she left, Sakura thoughtfully remarked that the girl was quite unusual. The hero agreed, adding that apparently such individuals were not uncommon in this world. Meanwhile, Hestia returned to her native land, where a huge dragon was already waiting for her, listening to what was happening. He addressed her, calling her by name, Beast Radon. She stood before the giant creature that lay at the foot of the mountain, watching her with interest. He was pleased that she had returned unharmed from human territory. The girl took off her cloak, and the dragon offered her to change her appearance, putting on human clothes. He noted that her disguise was truly remarkable. Hestia, in turn, reminded him that he had contributed greatly to the cause, and that they had both worked tirelessly for their people. After this, the dragon, showing politeness, bowed down and asked his mistress how her journey had gone and how dangerous the enemy had been. The girl thought for a moment and then admitted that she had not wanted to fight that young man at all. This admission surprised the dragon, because the chance of losing and even dying was very high, and she had absolutely no desire to destroy that world. Recalling the meeting with the young man, Hestia noted that he was not only much stronger than her, but also treated her to amazingly tasty apples. The dragon, having listened to her, was surprised. After all, according to his information, the fighters were already preparing for an attack, strengthening their detachments and awaiting orders. The girl nodded, confirming that she knew about it, but asked to wait a little. She assured that she would challenge the young man to a duel, and if he demonstrated enough strength to overthrow the current Dragon King, the others would retreat on their own, without engaging in battle. While Sakura was resting in her room, the young man decided to look around the area to check if anything new had happened near the house. He approached a patch of lawn and saw a large crater gaping in the middle of the green lawn. He immediately called Sakura, asking her to come over for a minute. The girl was distracted from her work and hurried to him. The young man reported that his garden now looked like a green mess after all the unexpected visitors. He complained that he couldn't even move the boulder blocking the passage. Sakura suggested using a wooden golem. Intrigued, the young man asked if it was possible to synchronize with it. At this point, Sakura was breathing with difficulty and was barely catching her breath, claiming that synchronization was possible. The guy noticed that she was all red and looked exhausted, so he carefully asked if she was okay. The girl, a little embarrassed, explained that she simply ran too fast towards him, and that was why she was out of breath. The boy said that she could have just confessed if she felt bad. Sakura nodded and thanked him for his concern, repeating that she was perfectly fine. He then placed his hand on her head, channeled his magical power, and suggested that they get down to business. Summoning a wooden golem, he announced that it was time to get to work. 2 wooden creatures appeared before him. The young man was happy to note that he had succeeded. Looking at one of them, slightly taller than him, he wondered if this golem was too small to move such a heavy stone. An idea came to his mind: to combine them into one big one. He decided to channel his magic into his hands, hoping that this would allow him to control both golems and move the boulder. When he touched one of them, he was surprised to feel a strange softness, as if he had fallen into glue. It was hard to believe that he was touching a wooden structure. He tried to control the creature. The attempt to pull his hand out was futile. He was stuck. The young man noted out loud that the golem was unexpectedly too soft. At that moment, the golem began to move strangely, waving its arms in different directions. The young man was puzzled to notice that he had not given any commands. Then Sakura suggested that perhaps the golem was repeating his movements. The hero decided to check this by moving his hands and observing the creature's actions. He noted with admiration that the golem copied his gestures exactly. Sakura confirmed that everything was fine, because synchronization had occurred. She explained that the young man transferred magical energy through his own body to the golem's body, so it completely repeated the movements. The hero repeated with delight that magic was a truly amazing phenomenon. Then he added that he had a brilliant idea. He began to squeeze the wooden golem, trying to give it a new shape and create something fundamentally different. Sakura, watching his actions, covered her mouth with her hand and thought. Memories came to her mind. It was all so similar to how he was as a child, passionate, full of energy, and complete dedication. The next second, the young man demonstrated his new invention to Sakura. He entered 2 golems, connecting them into a single structure, and declared that he had created wooden armor. Sakura, seeing this, delightedly admitted that the owner was truly amazing. To assemble something like this from 2 golems was an incredible achievement. However, holding back a smile, she added that he looked quite funny, to which the young man, with slight irritation, asked her not to flatter him, because he reminded himself of a plump oak. Then he decided to test his invention in action and tried to lift a heavy block lying nearby. With the help of wooden armor, he did it without any difficulty. In such armor, he felt like he could do anything. He announced that he was going to clean the entire garden. Sakura, laughing, watched him and completely agreed. The young man demonstrated another ability. Using aerial projectiles, he bent the trunk of a tree and drove its top into the ground, creating a kind of trap. When a target passed by, the trunk straightened and launched projectiles at it. Thanks to wooden armor, it became very easy to create such mechanisms. Everything was connected by magic and the physical strength of the armor. Lately, he had expanded the area around the house considerably and set up several new traps, including the one he had demonstrated. He showed them to Sakura with pride. The young man assured that each of these traps would definitely work if the enemy dared to approach. At that moment, Sakura, watching her master with joy and admiration, suddenly felt her legs giving way. The world before her eyes darkened, and she began to fall. Frightened, the young man picked her up and, trying not to panic, began calling her by name, asking if she was okay. The girl weakly whispered that she was very sorry and asked him for forgiveness. She admitted that she apparently used too much magical energy. Sakura said that she had so much fun with him that she simply forgot about the need to replenish her magical reserves. The boy continued to hold her in his arms, listening to her weak voice. She explained that she had taken energy directly from the dragon's vein, but now she needed a few hours of sleep to recover. Suddenly, a dry crunch was heard from behind. The sound was coming from the house. The girl sheepishly admitted that, due to her exhaustion, the spirit of the house began to collapse. She smiled with difficulty, reminding that she was the spirit of this house, and in her state, the whole building did not look its best. The young man frowned and asked if there was a way to speed up the recovery. Turning to Sakura, he heard that such a way really existed. He could transfer some of his magical energy to her. Relieved to hear this, the young man readily declared that he would do whatever was required and asked her to explain what needed to be done. The girl, a little embarrassed, said that the most effective way to restore her energy was to satisfy her desire. The young man frowned and asked what exactly they were talking about. He was clearly not prepared for such a turn of events. Sakura blushed and said that in order to restore magic, all her desires must be satisfied. The hero, hearing this, froze in confusion and thought, Considering recent events, he began to suspect that his mind was clearly failing. He asked the girl to repeat it again to make sure he had not misheard. The young man froze when he heard that in order to restore his energy, he needed to satisfy the girl's libido. He was shocked no less than Sakura herself. He tried to clarify, maybe it would be enough to just eat or sleep, but Sakura shook her head. She did not need sleep, and to replenish the lost strength with food, it would take too much food. It was ineffective. The hero thought about it. Indeed, he had never seen Sakura sleeping, and she always ate very little, clearly disproportionate to her magical expenditure. He then asked if she always restored her magic this way. Sakura nodded. Yes, but she had never reached such a level of exhaustion before. This meant that she resorted to this method quite often, a thought that made the young man blush a little. He admitted that he felt awkward talking about it out loud, because the topic seemed too personal to him. He turned to Sakura and tried to insist that maybe they should just get some rest. But if the energy transfer really did speed up the recovery, was it worth the delay? Sakura confirmed. Yes, this method is much more effective. And her voice sounded quiet, but confident. Then, lifting her into his arms, the young man said with determination that he would do whatever she asked. He, Daichi, would fulfill her every wish. It started to rain outside. Carrying Sakura carefully, Daichi returned to the house and laid her down on the bed. Then he quietly asked if she was ready. In response, she asked him with concern how the owner himself was feeling. While the girl lay there, he looked around the room. The walls were covered with cracks. Everything became clear. If Sakura was the spirit of the house, then her decline was reflected in the appearance of the dwelling. He asked if everything would get better after restoration. Sakura, embarrassedly turning away, admitted that she was not sure. After all, she was just a spirit. He might not like her appearance, for which she wanted to apologize. But the young man dismissed her fears. He gently replied that she had never caused him any inconvenience. In fact, he found her sweet, he liked her character, and her embarrassment only made her more beautiful. He did not want to lose her, not at all. He quietly added that, if she didn't mind, he wanted to stay with her forever. These words touched Sakura to the depths of her soul. She was truly happy. What she heard seemed incredible to her, too wonderful to be true. Sakura admitted that she had been thinking about him since he was born. She was happy that they were here now, together, in this house filled with memories of his life, which she had observed from the very beginning. The hero felt a pang of shame. He apologized. Before, he had seen her as just a house, a thing, a piece of furniture. But now in front of him was an incredibly sweet girl named Sakura. He leaned towards her and, looking into her eyes, whispered that now they would really be together. Then he gently pressed his palm to her cheek and kissed her tenderly. A little embarrassed, but full of determination, the heroes nevertheless decided to do what Sakura asked. Daichi took the initiative, gently announcing that he would begin, and Sakura, still blushing, remained in her previous position, letting things take their course. At one point, he asked her anxiously if everything was okay. The girl, wiping away her tears, quickly assured him that she was not crying from pain. These were tears of joy. She was happier than ever. And while the young man was expressing his love for her, the house began to slowly recover. The cracks disappeared one by one, as if the building was responding to the feelings expressed. When it was all over, the house looked completely intact, as if it had never been damaged. Exhausted, Daichi fell asleep. Sakura, gently hugging his head in her lap, quietly whispered that he was the only one who could be her master, the only one who truly lived in her. And then she closed her eyes too. Waking up in the morning, the young man was surprised to notice that his house had a second floor. He wondered, who could have added an extension while he was sleeping? Sakura, appearing behind him, sheepishly reported that perhaps it was because of his magical energy inside her, and it seemed that she had become pregnant. Daichi was taken aback. He tried to make sense of what he had heard. If she was talking about pregnancy, then it was unlikely that she was talking about a biological process, especially considering that the new floor was stone and wood, not a child. Then Sakura, unable to bear it any longer, explained, since she is the spirit of the house, it is logical to assume that her children are new parts of the house itself. She said that the magical energy transferred to her was so powerful that its excess materialized in the form of a new structure. This is how the second floor appeared. The young man thought about it, and everything fell into place. It turned out that if he continued to share energy with her, their house would grow. He even smiled at his guess. The thought was unexpectedly pleasant. He looked at Sakura and smiled happily. She quietly confirmed in response. It was exactly like that. The first floor was like their first child, and it was just sweet. After merging with Sakura, Daichi got a second floor. The house changed, and not just physically. As they walked down the stairs, they looked at the new space with interest. The first floor now seemed so cozy. After all, it was the first real extension of their shared home. Going down, the young man was delighted. The space, the light, and the scope. Everything looked luxurious. He examined every corner. Inside was a full-fledged 3-room apartment. A large hall, furniture, even decorations, as if the house itself knew what its owner needed. Sakura followed him modestly. Daichi noted with admiration that all this was simply incredible. The girl blushed and quietly replied that she had not actually done anything. All this was the result of the energy he had given her. The magic filled her, and she involuntarily gave birth to a new floor. The young man did not give himself any special credit. He simply wanted to return upstairs, to where it was a little more comfortable. As he climbed back up, he felt that his home had changed. But at the same time, it had become truly alive. Coming to the window, Daichi suddenly noticed something new. Behind the house, right on the edge of the forest, stood a neat little shed. He looked at it in surprise. Had it really appeared that night? He wondered how many strange and amazing things had appeared on his property since Sakura had been filled with his magical energy. The girl happily confirmed. Yes, it was a new building. And, she added excitedly, it was empty. For now, maybe we could rent it out? The idea of him becoming a landlord seemed funny to the boy. Why not? If he could find tenants, things could work out. Sakura nodded happily, pleased that they thought the same way. She admitted that she had dreamed of having more people in this house, more energy, more life, but embarrassed, she added cautiously, just please, let the owner stay and live with me on the second floor, she said quietly, lowering her gaze. I don't want you to leave. The young man smiled and stroked her head. He had no intention of leaving. This room, this comfort, all this had become truly familiar. He looked around and confidently concluded, the house may grow, but this place is his real home. He didn't even want to imagine anything else. The boy's words clearly touched Sakura. She blushed and smiled happily, quietly clinging to him. He asked her, slightly teasingly, if she was really that worried. The girl nodded. How could it be otherwise? What if he saw the new extension, thought he liked it better, and moved in? Daichi grinned. What if I really did think about it? Sakura immediately tensed up, her eyes narrowed. Then I will expand this room to such an extent that no extension will compare. She was ready for anything, because for her, there was nothing more important than her master's wishes. At that moment, she was absolutely happy. Daichi looked at her with a slight smile, understanding. She was not going to give up. And indeed, Sakura only confirmed it. Everyone has the right to choose. She intends to do everything so that he chooses her. You will definitely choose me, she added confidently. I promise that. The young man was a little embarrassed, but immediately assured her that he was not going to move anywhere, so she should leave such thoughts behind. Sakura, not hiding her joy, ran into his arms and suggested that they go to breakfast. A week passed. Waking up early in the morning, Daichi went outside and was stunned. In the middle of the forest, a real skyscraper now towered. He didn't even immediately realize that this was his house. In 7 days, the building grew another 7 floors. But he did nothing. Nothing at all. Ordinary moments came to mind. Breakfast, morning walks in the garden, a gentle good morning from Sakura, sleeping together in an embrace. Everything as always, a quiet, calm life. But one fact worried him a little. He hadn't looked into her secret rooms once during the entire week. At most, they had simply slept next to each other. Was that really enough? Sakura was just explaining that his magic was so strong that it was still overflowing her. Even just being there was a transfer of energy. That is to say, the young man said thoughtfully, even if we just sleep next to each other, the house will continue to grow? Sakura nodded with a serious face. Absolutely right. Daichi chuckled. This is the easiest way to expand the territory. Sleep and build. He did not think that this would cause problems for anyone. There is a forest around. There is plenty of space. And the house? Yes, now it resembled a tower. Turning to Sakura, he added,
I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel, liked and wrote a comment, rating this manga on a scale from 1 to 10. Your opinion is very important to me. This will help me better understand what my audience is interested in, because you are really important to me.
A tall, modern house stands prominently with trees around, labeled as a new house. The character comments on the house's size. Girl with long hair and a bow closes her eyes and smiles softly. She seems calm and content. Text panel states she gave magic power to Sakura. A young man contemplates the situation, touching his face with concern. He talks about worry regarding security on the ground floor due to their high position. His expression is serious. Two characters stand near a railing, engaged in conversation about golems handling intruders quickly. One character questions while the other affirms the plan. The gist is the golem's role in security. A young woman in a crown and detailed armor stands in a forest clearing, looking startled and sweating. She questions the sudden appearance of a dungeon where a house once stood. A smaller figure in a witch-like hat stands farther down the path. A person leans on a balcony railing, looking towards a nearby tree where a small creature floats. They note someone came to visit and ask if another will greet her. A girl offers something to a confused boy, standing on a bridge or elevated walkway. She asks him to use the item while he reacts with surprise. A boy and a girl stand before a large tree with an elevator door built into its trunk. The boy expresses surprise at the existence of the elevator, while the girl appears calm and composed beside him. This scene captures a mix of modern technology integrated into nature. Two characters stand before a large, hollowed rock structure surrounded by a fence. One character announces they created something similar using magic. The setting appears outdoors under a cloudy sky. A girl with twin hair clips smiles while speaking. She declines an invitation politely and informs she will prepare dinner. Flowers decorate the background, emphasizing her cheerful mood. A man stands facing a mysterious doorway emitting sound effects, noting the surprising usefulness of magic power once again. A young man discusses the features of a house, noting it is larger and recalling the second floor on the original house. He appears thoughtful as he speaks about the structure. A young man with dark, tousled hair smirks while resting his chin on his hand, questioning aloud the purpose of the remaining 5 floors. He speaks with a calculating tone amid a textured background suggesting tension or confusion. Gist: he wonders about the use of the other 5 floors. A woman with a short bob hairstyle smiles and mentions relief about not being in the wrong place. A man asks why she looks nervous, and she responds with surprise, recognizing him. Two characters engage in conversation with a light atmosphere. One wears a hat and mentions work done since the last meeting, while the other, smiling and sweating slightly, comments on the interesting days they've had. A girl, dressed as a witch, smiling, explains her reason for visiting amid a natural landscape with mountains and trees behind a building. She reports improved safety and an easier job. The gist is she visits due to safer conditions and easier work. Man thinks about a woman and recalls his own experience of staying up all night to meet deadlines while working late into the night with a stack of papers and computer. Man and woman meet on a forest path surrounded by trees. Woman states she has a reason for coming there. Man listens as she prepares to explain. A character places a large bag on the ground and offers it, saying it contains 1 million silver. They insist on the recipient accepting it immediately. Young man with damp, messy hair and striped shirt states he does not need any money, showing slight discomfort. Speech bubble emphasizes refusal of money. A young man faces a girl dressed as a witch outdoors. She holds a sack and insists on gratitude. He questions her demand with confusion. A young witch explains that since another character's arrival, the area has been saturated with magical energy, showing swirling energy around a tower in a forested area. Character explains that crops and livestock have been growing well, and materials from animals are of the highest quality. Images show a cow, pig, chickens, eggs, milk can, sack, and hanging sausages above a grain field. Two characters walk outside, surrounded by large trees. One points while the other listens. A magical bird flies nearby. Discussion involves using magical power freely during outings. A group of people cheer loudly, raising their fists and mugs in celebration. One person asks if they will be thanked for their actions. They display unity and excitement. A woman in a witch-like outfit stands with arms extended, offering a bag as a gift for bringing prosperity to the kingdom. Young man with messy black hair speaks with a slight smile. He comments on a woman who strongly dislikes unpaid debts. He seems to understand her well. A young man decides to manage a task himself. He instructs a creature called Golem to store something in a house. Golem reacts with surprise to the order. Girl with a hat warns against involving golems, recalling a past event. Behind her, another figure summons a creature or power. The scene conveys tension and caution. Characters stand in front of a large glass display containing strange creatures resembling oversized seed pods with small legs. One person reacts with alarm, questioning what they see. The scene shows surprise and curiosity about the creatures. Two characters stand in a hangar filled with large golem figures. One character explains that the first floor was converted into a golem hangar. The other comments on the room being packed with golems. A young woman wearing a large witch's hat and cape looks distressed and worried. She exclaims her frustration about a recurring problem while clutching her skirt. The scene conveys sudden anxiety and tension. A man warns that something will not help, expressing doubt based on previous experience with capture. A woman wearing a witch hat and surrounded by roses assures him otherwise, confident in her approach. Several large, ghost-like creatures with black eyes hover over a city, surrounded by explosions and heavy destruction. A figure questions if the other plans to invade the city, noting the excessive strength used just to defend a house. Boy stands on a path in the woods, hands on hips, speaking with a small figure wearing a cloak and helmet. The boy acknowledges the figure's active imagination but rejects the idea being discussed. He says he never considered doing that and does not want to do it at all. A young man with messy dark hair speaks with a calm expression, stating his contentment with his house and a portion of land for gardening. A round-headed figure comments on the nature of golems and apple trees. A man nearby reacts with surprise, while another figure acknowledges something's arrival. One character tells another not to yell at a large, round creature, saying it makes him sad. The creature looks down, conveying sadness. Two people nearby observe quietly. A young man commands a golem to bend over, while a woman wearing a witch hat says she is a bit tired and comments on how it's easy for her to jump to conclusions. A girl holds up an apple while stating it is the delivery fee. A boy wrapped in a blanket calls out to her from a distance. The scene suggests a simple exchange between the two. A character senses an apple full of magic power in a robotic hand and offers it to another for recovery aid when tired. Questions arise about the apple's effect and willingness to accept it. A young man talks to someone off-panel, smiling with eyes closed. He asks if the person is tired and says eating will make them feel better. Man expresses insistence on preparing a payment despite the woman's discomfort. Woman tries to reassure him that payment is unnecessary. They discuss an obligation that causes tension. A person reclines with one arm behind their head, facing away, and remarks about someone getting noisy upon arrival. Another figure stands at a distance, appearing small and passive. A young man stands beside a large creature with a single eye resembling a tree stump. He mentions various beings, such as humans, wolves, and dragons, that have lived there. He expresses a desire to find more people to inhabit the area. Gist: a man reflects on diverse inhabitants and hopes to attract more. A small figure with a flower hair accessory stands near a tall, rectangular structure, speaking about the strangeness of a form to the people of this world. The gist is confusion about the unfamiliar. A boy and a girl discuss a plan involving synchronization to secure lower floors. The boy expresses excitement and agreement, while the girl suggests asking Sakura for help. They stand in front of a tall, multi-story building surrounded by trees, discussing their strategy for securing the area. Two characters approach an old, traditional house. One character smiles broadly and announces the return of the original house. The scene emphasizes reunion and nostalgia. Two characters stand outside near a set of stairs. One expresses concern about a previous form being inconvenient and unstable. Character reveals storage of floors underground. Basement floors 1 to 5 hold general storage in crates. Floor 6 stores golems. 4 golems stand at the bottom floor, labeled B6. Character explains that the golems are kept at the bottom layer, and that they can quickly rise to the surface through hidden trapdoors, like a secret base. A girl expresses happiness that more people will come and make the place livelier. A boy comments that the house should no longer cause problems for visitors. They speak about the house's atmosphere improving. A young woman with animal-like ears and long hair stands holding a staff in a forested area. Someone announces the arrival of a figure, noting their return. The scene highlights recognition and surprise at the comeback. A young man greets a girl energetically and confirms his recognition of her by name. He observes that the girl looks different, Noting her changed hair, the girl admits to disguising herself with a hairstyle change and makeup. A character with pure white hair holds a branch and talks about the difficulty this hair causes by making them stand out. They explain their companions dye the hair before travel. 3 children stand together in front of a small house surrounded by trees. One boy with dark hair smiles and speaks. He comments on the presence of good friends nearby. A close-up shows a girl with eyes nearly closed, speaking softly about no longer needing to hide and accepting herself as she is. She states this acceptance explains her current state. A young man asks a girl if she has found a safe place to settle down now that she no longer needs to disguise herself. The girl responds affirmatively. A girl with short, light-colored hair and horns touches her chest while looking concerned. She questions if there is something wrong with her clothes, surrounded by floating question marks. A young man and a young woman speak about clothes related to family deaths. He notes the clothes seem similar to others he's seen before. She explains they're worn when a family member dies. A girl defends her clothes, saying they are her best. A boy apologizes, clarifying he did not mean they were bad. They engage in a brief, polite exchange. A character dressed with a horned accessory explains wearing them during critical moments involving life or death decisions. The scene includes a sky with scattered leaves. The gist. The character associates their attire with decisive events. A young man contemplates a serious choice. He thinks about the impact of someone settling down. He believes it would be a significant decision. A young man visits a girl and a creature outdoors by a fence. He says he came to thank her for the apple. The scene shows a quiet moment of gratitude. A young man scratches his head while standing. A woman dressed in a witch costume smiles confidently. Another smaller figure of the witch floats beside them. The man comments that people here dislike unpaid debts. Gist. The man notes locals dislike debts left unpaid. A young character with determined eyes holds out a large scroll, saying something as it unfurls dramatically in front of them. The character commands attention with the gesture and words. The character presents a scroll to someone, ready to share its contents. A character holds up a detailed map depicting forests, mountains, and marked locations. Another character asks if it is a map. The scene focuses on their interaction regarding the map's purpose. A girl points at a map showing a castle labeled Prussia, calling it a witch's city. A boy stands nearby as the girl explains it's a simplified world map. The scene highlights a discussion about travel and geography. Characters discuss different countries and cities in their world, including the Holy Night City and the Beastman's Land, while looking at a detailed landscape. A young woman holding a staff stands before a man and a woman who look at her attentively in a forest clearing. She says she has gained knowledge useful to them and offers to teach if they desire. A young man stands with one hand on his chin, appearing to ponder a question. He verbally expresses uncertainty and thinks aloud about what he knows. A young man with short, dark hair smiles broadly, scratching the back of his head. He confesses ignorance about the world, indicating a lack of knowledge. A man expresses reluctance about leaving his house, saying the surroundings are unfamiliar to him. He then agrees to learn more about the world offered by another person, indicating readiness to accept the offer. A man bows deeply to a horned woman in a forest while asking her to teach him. The woman reacts with surprise. The man earnestly requests instruction from the woman named Hasty. A girl with long hair and elf-like ears looks thoughtful, while another smiling girl with similar ears tells her to take her time and make it a good lesson. A conversation about preparation and learning takes place calmly. A boy and a girl examine a map in a forest. The girl points to the edge of the dark forest on the map, explaining it as the evil forest or forest of temptation. The boy asks where his house is on the map. A girl points out a location on the west as the valley where dragons live, with rocky mountains and a flying dragon in the background. Young boy sits on a ledge, speaking in surprise. A smaller figure stands below, holding a creature with extended arms. The boy connects this to a recent observation. A large, rocky creature rises aggressively amidst flying debris, shouting loudly. The scene shows its powerful ascent, surrounded by dynamic rock fragments and dust. The creature asserts its presence with a fierce roar. Two characters discuss magical stones in a forest. One expresses frustration about an interruption, the other insists on continuing. Magical stones here are used for creating magical products. A monstrous golem, made of jagged stones, rises fiercely from shattered ground while a character urgently reacts to a map being threatened. the golem forms as stones gather. A character states that the subject has immense regeneration power due to its composition. Another character adds that it is nearly indestructible. Male character explains using the right material can distract the golem. Female character listens silently with a serious expression, wearing a horned headpiece and detailed outfit. Golem's shadow looms in the background. Gist: they plan to distract the golem using the right material. Two characters sit on the ground near rocks, discussing a dragon scale. One explains the scale's origin from a strong dragon and suggests throwing it to distract something. A young man speaks confidently about needing the right material to avoid a fight. He suggests trying out his approach with a slight smile. Gist: he believes preparation can prevent conflict. A young man stands next to a girl with cat ears. He admits to messing up a decoy and mentions accidentally turning a scale into a weapon using magic. Gist: he acknowledges a magical mistake. A boy and a girl stand outdoors on rough ground. The girl, holding a staff, comments on the damage and regeneration. The boy responds thoughtfully about being more careful in the future. One character observes another, questioning if they are hungry. The second character responds with uncertainty. Interaction centers around hunger inquiry. A young man offers a snack to a girl, who accepts it with gratitude. They exchange brief words, showing a simple, polite interaction. A man watches a small girl with horns eating food. She looks like a cute little animal. Man compares her eating style to that of a little animal. Characters stand in a tree-lined path with light filtering through the leaves. One asks to return, while the other states it is getting dark and they will leave now. The scene shows departure amid fading daylight. A female character with horns and a detailed outfit thanks someone quietly while looking somber. A side note comments on her expression as saddening. The scene conveys a moment of subdued gratitude. Two characters appear on a broken cliff. One small figure watches from above, while a large dragon lunges forward. A battle seems urgent, as one character questions why the other did not fight. A small figure stands on a rock facing a large, winged dragon. The figure tells the dragon that lower dragons will die without its intervention, emphasizing the dragon's duty. A young woman with flowing hair and a delicate outfit speaks quietly. She asks for just one more day, indicating awareness of an implied struggle or deadline. A man notices a woman arriving in a forested area and speaks to her. The woman asks for one more day of waiting. The setting is outdoors, with trees and foliage around. A young man stands holding a basket of apples beside a large creature with dark eyes and fur, which asks him to wait, as it was picking apples. The man says the golems can finish up here. A young character with detailed attire holds out a Dragon King bone wand and a cloak, presenting them clearly to another party. The environment and action suggest a significant moment involving these items. A girl tells a boy that she is giving him an expensive gift for him to use. The boy expresses surprise and thanks her. They talk about the value of the gift outdoors near a house. A young man in a jacket expresses comfort with an item, holding a long, intricately designed staff. He mentions the design's familiarity to the nearby area. A girl observes him from behind, curious about his actions. Two characters discuss the use of an object as a melee weapon. One tests it by hitting a ball, while the other ponders if a catalyst is necessary for growth. The scene merges practical action with contemplation. Young woman with ethereal horns and delicate jewelry smiles softly and says a phrase to someone. Clouds fill the background, adding a dreamy atmosphere to the scene. She clarifies that what she said was not serious, putting a gentle tone to her expression. A young man looks slightly surprised while thinking about a girl. He reflects on her playful nature, which he hadn't expected from her usual demeanor. A character remarks on the inefficiency of magic but values imagination magic despite its tiring effect. Another character shows exhaustion after excessive magic use, while a third stands confidently. A girl explains the importance of making a magic key, while a boy questions the need for a key. An elf-like character with long hair and pointed ears crouches by a tree branch. They explain selecting a word representing imagination magic, which reduces mental burden. The character offers to demonstrate this ability. A character commands a flame to explode, causing a large burst of fire. Two others observe, one encouraging the other to do more despite the overwhelming flame. They both show signs of surprise and admiration at the power shown. A young man explains feeling like a keyboard shortcut operates in his head. A teacher with glasses stands beside a blackboard, explaining the lower magic power consumption. She instructs to pick a word, define an effect, and register it easily. Young man with short, messy hair rolls up his sleeve while standing outside under a cloudy sky and beside some trees. He says he has to try something, showing determination through his action and speech. A character summons a large wood golem with a tree on its back, impressing observers with success on the first attempt. The golem moves as the scene shifts focus. Summoning a wood golem on the first try is impressive. A man observes a group of wood golems with tree-like features on their heads and bodies. He comments on the magic usage, then prepares to engage with them again. The scene shows multiple golems activating around him. A young man excitedly declares he succeeded, remarking on his energy and lack of hunger. He praises the magic key's efficiency while speaking to a skeletal figure. The scene highlights success and surprise at the magic key's power. Male character asks a female named Hasty what is wrong. Hasty closes her eyes, touching her forehead, remaining silent. The scene implies concern about Hasty's condition. A cloaked man addresses a woman holding a staff, discussing the unusual way she uses magic, compared to the norm of sticking to a defined list. A young man with short, dark hair smiles broadly, holding a staff with a skeletal hand design. He wears a cloak and expresses amazement and gratitude towards someone named Hasty. A young man calls to a girl named Sakura, attracting the attention of others nearby. A girl with horns calmly responds, expressing that the young man is worthy to use something given. She assures him he is welcome, showing quiet confidence. A girl with horns and elf-like ears holds a cup while commenting on its taste as bitter but good. She remains quiet for a moment before speaking. The scene captures a simple moment of tasting and reflection. A man remarks on a girl's eating habits as she munches energetically. A woman offers sweets to the girl, who then calls them delicious. The man expresses gladness at the compliment. A girl in traditional clothes stands on a grassy field near a house. She addresses others with concern, telling them not to push themselves too hard before saying goodbye and leaving. A young man with black hair raises his arm confidently, speaking to someone off-panel about practicing if they want to leave. A girl with long hair offers to keep him company, her hand resting on his arm. The scene conveys a casual, friendly interaction with a hint of challenge. A young man, visibly tired, addresses a final task while wearing gloves, signaling the end of an effort. He expresses exhaustion, but remains determined to finish. The scene captures a moment of resolve amid fatigue. Two characters sit outdoors. One praises the other's teaching skills. They discuss changing a golem's appearance by combining multiple trees for today's work. Characters discuss the evening and concern about getting home safely during a short walk as darkness approaches. A young woman with delicate, wavy hair adorned with a decorative accessory faces forward with a gentle smile. She states their time is over, signaling an end to their interaction. Another voice says goodbye, marking farewell. A man in armor, holding a helmet, calls out a name, puzzled by a girl's unexpected farewell in a shimmering forest environment. He questions what she meant by goodbye and what might happen next. A dragon with large wings appears before a mountainous landscape. A figure stands on a tall rock announcing the Dragon King of White Flame, Hasty, will battle tomorrow morning. A group of dragons gathers in the sky near jagged rock formations. One dragon, appearing to lead, calls the others to prepare with urgency. A towering, jagged peak rises into a moonlit sky filled with flying dragons. A lone figure stands atop the peak, commanding the dragons below, depicted in detailed shadows and textures. Several dragon-like creatures fly fiercely among towering rock formations under a cloudy sky. One shouts with excitement as they navigate the jagged landscape, creating a tense and chaotic atmosphere. Two characters stand and squat near a small, flower-like creature. They discuss having an advantage due to outnumbering a small human enemy. A scene shows a man alone in a large, open area, surrounded by trees and a house far away. A group of winged creatures flies energetically toward a large dragon in a mountainous area. One creature calls out to attend the Dragon King fight tomorrow, inciting excitement among them. A horned woman in armor stands on a cliff talking to flying creatures. She questions her rule over them and calls them simple-minded, pondering her choices quietly. A girl and a large dragon with a serious expression stand near two smaller flying dragons. The girl reflects on the dragon's longevity and critical thinking abilities during crisis. Dialogue reveals the dragon has survived almost a century thanks to experience and cleverness. A woman with long hair and decorative hairpieces accepts responsibility for her group's cohesion. She resolves to assist them this time, showing a sense of duty and leadership. Two characters stand on a rocky cliff under a starry sky, engaging in a serious conversation about preparing for tomorrow. The larger figure takes responsibility for an unfortunate event. The smaller character responds thoughtfully. A young character with animal-like ears floats with arms extended, with mountains in the background. She reflects on feeling magic flow through her body after a long time. A figure clad in intricate armor hovers in the sky, wings extended wide and a long tail trailing behind. Clouds frame the scene, emphasizing the figure's imposing presence above the ground. Three characters sit on grass, two facing a young man who holds a bowl, while the small character beside him eats quietly. One woman speaks about explaining magic in this world. The scene depicts a calm exchange of knowledge. A large, intricately designed, dragon-like figure speaks about never having faced an opponent worthy of their full power. They express anticipation for such a challenge. Night settles over a rocky mountain landscape with a glowing moon in the sky. Dialogue reveals a character accepting they won't return to this place. A fierce battle is anticipated next time. Two characters engage in conversation on a terrace furnished with a sofa and a table set for tea. One points toward a distant, rugged valley called the Valley of the Dragons, deeming the view superb. The other downplays its appearance, calling it just a bunch of rugged rocks. A figure stands on a rooftop deck, designed like a traditional house, praising the tower's vantage point for its wide views. Another expresses happiness spending the morning together there. The scene focuses on the unique rooftop setting and shared moment. A character explains that a magic key reduces his magic use, making him less tired and able to wake up earlier, while another listens silently. A young man expresses concern about a woman's safety the previous night. A faint, smiling female figure replies that their time is now over and says goodbye. He watches her disappear, troubled by the farewell. A large group of dragons flies over a forest landscape with rocky towers. Among them, a prominent, huge white dragon leads the horde. The scene reveals a vast, powerful force approaching. A girl with long hair and a bow speaks while looking away. She mentions not sensing hostility in a dragon's eyes. Dialogue is accompanied by motion lines indicating movement or emphasis. Two characters discuss the proximity of something and the increasing wind strength. One character asks if they should move down now, and the other agrees. They stand outdoors near a large tree. Two figures approach a tall house. One remarks about the long time needed to reach the first floor due to its height. The other confirms the presence of someone inside. A man holding a staff looks intensely at a tall, dark building surrounded by swirling energy. Flames and motion lines suggest urgency and power. He realizes the house is important, connecting it to someone named Sakura. A young girl with long hair reports that despite slight wall damage, the main structure remains intact. A nearby figure responds briefly, acknowledging this with the word good. A large humanoid dragon with wings hovers in the sky above a city. Two small figures stand on the ground near a tall building. The dragon speaks about those who live there. A powerful figure clad in armor with large dragon wings hovers above the ground. Many smaller dragons fly in the background under a bright sky. The figure declares leadership of the Valley of Dragons and challenges others to fight. A close-up of a dragon's armored face is shown. The dragon declares its intent to burn the land with white fire. The scene centers on the dragon's fierce expression and threatening words. A determined young man states he will fight and defend his home at any cost. He stands firm against an unseen challenge. The essence is his unwavering resolve to protect his home. A young man urgently commands Sakura to act immediately. Sakura acknowledges and prepares to respond without hesitation. They demonstrate quick teamwork and readiness to face a challenge. A young man holds a magical staff in one hand and grips a girl's hand with the other while standing on a grassy field. The girl looks surprised, but agrees quickly to the man's command to start synchronization at full power. The man plans to use his magic key after synchronization begins. Branches twist and stretch skyward, bearing fruit and leaves bending in an unseen force. Two figures stand at the base holding magical staffs, surrounded by an energy buildup. They activate a powerful wood armor spell. A massive armored figure grapples with large, thorny vines wrapping around its body. Nearby, a humanoid dragon with wings hovers above a forested area, facing a building. The scene conveys tension between mystical beings amid nature and urban elements. A giant robot, armored with bulky, segmented plates, stands in a fiery background. Wood textures cover parts of its body, notably the torso, arms, and legs, hinting at a robust, organic-mechanical hybrid design. A man holds a staff and states he can combine 100 golems with a magic key. A woman stands behind him, silent. He mentions seeing through a connection with Sakura. A large, strange creature with a thick body and a distinctive head stands in front of a girl with long hair. A man nearby comments about the creature, comparing it to one he made before and finding it superior. Two characters face a towering armored figure resembling a dragon. Dragons fly in the background, emphasizing scale. Dialogue reveals the armor is large, but dragons are even bigger. A large winged humanoid dragon confronts a small armored figure in a field with scattered trees. Flying creatures fill the sky near a tall, castle-like tower. The armored figure notes the enemy's size and flight capability as an advantage. A determined young woman, shown in mid-speech, explains she has protected the house with magic and urges someone to fight with full strength. She speaks with conviction and energy. A tall, narrow building stands isolated amidst trees. A figure adjusts something on a machine in the foreground. The figure prioritizes keeping a place safe with teamwork. A young man stands firmly with a determined gaze, holding a torn cape. He declares that this is his home, where he can live happily, and refuses to lose it to anyone. A large armored figure lunges forward, fists clenched and ready for combat. The figure announces an attack move named Wood Armor King Attack. The scene conveys action and power. A young man stands in a large doorway with arms spread wide, delivering an important announcement. Doors behind him appear heavy and detailed. The announcement concerns an unprecedented situation in the kingdom from the observation team. A group of people, some dressed in capes and wizard hats, gather in a large, ornate room with chandeliers and tall windows. Two characters speak about the flying dragon king of white flame, seen in a dark forest, warning of his accompanying dragons. The scene implies a discussion of a looming threat from powerful dragon forces. A woman looks out a window at flying creatures and distant towers, expressing urgent concern that the city's safety is at risk if invaders arrive. The gist is the city's safety is threatened by approaching enemies. Anthropomorphic wolf characters run along a forest path, some pulling carts with goods, and one carrying a child. Trees and shadows surround the scene as they rush away. One character announces the wolf tribe is fleeing. A man with short hair dressed in religious robes holds a cross and urgently announces the need to call for aid and evacuate the city. Three characters speak urgently about evacuation and the city's doom due to the Dragon King. One worries about safety while another claims the city is doomed. A witch-like woman walks forward in a room where a few people are present. One addresses her as princess while another calls for everyone to calm down. A determined woman dressed in a detailed, armored outfit and wide-brimmed hat insists there is no time to panic. She urgently asks a messenger about the number of dragons present. Several individuals in cloaks and armor gather in a grand room, discussing numbers and strategies. Mention of at least 50 is made. A large dragon emits a swirling, circular energy from its chest, depicted with sharp lines to show intensity. A girl in a witch hat observes it with a serious, slightly sweat-dropped expression. She remarks about the creature being the Dragon King of White Flame. A dragon of legend causing destruction suddenly appears, surprising onlookers who thought it was dormant. Flames and ruins fill the scene as the dragon hovers above. A group of people stands in a spacious room, some in cloaks and hats, facing a figure giving orders, with chandeliers and decorations overhead. One commands evacuation and saving as many people as possible. The scene shows preparation for urgent action. A man states he has requested reinforcements and expects them to arrive in at least a day. A woman listens silently, thinking. The man conveys urgency about the delay. A determined young woman dressed in armor and a large hat firmly grips a sword. She declares her intention to go and fight, showing resolve and readiness for battle. A young woman dressed as a witch speaks with determination about helping her city. She stands in profile, wearing a pointed hat and cloak. She expresses hope and resolve to contribute positively. A character dressed in armor tightly grips a sword, acknowledging the knight captain's statement. The character admits that winning is impossible and that continuing to fight would waste their life. The scene centers on resignation and acceptance of an unwinnable situation. Character wearing a hat and earrings smiles with closed eyes, expressing a plan to delay something by going all out. Characters stand outside a large castle. One expresses relief at being second princess, allowing fighting instead of fleeing. Dragons fly overhead as people gather. Gist: gratitude for role enables protection, not escape. A determined female mage, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and armor with a cape, holds a staff firmly. She declares readiness to sacrifice her life to protect others. A young witch wearing a pointed hat and a cloak turns to speak. She asks to be observed until the end and announces she is leaving now. Three characters react in a large stone building as a vertical portal opens. One shouts a warning to a princess who is likely the target of teleportation. They reach toward the portal in urgency. A young woman dressed as a mage reports a successful teleportation in a forest setting. She then questions the whereabouts of the Dragon King. A woman exclaims loudly in alarm. An explosion erupts in front of a cloaked figure. The figure reacts to the sudden blast. A giant mechanical figure raises both hands, with visible cables or tubes extending from its torso. The scene is dynamic, showing motion lines suggesting power or movement towards the foreground. The perspective emphasizes the size and dominance of the robot over the smaller figure below. A large armored figure stands amidst a burning forest, smoke rising around it, while a small person nearby questions the figure's ability to block flames. A young woman in a distinctive hat reacts with shock upon hearing a voice. A man in armor notices her presence and questions why she is there. Both recognize the woman as a princess. A winged humanoid dragon confronts a large armored figure on a burning battlefield. The dragon accuses the armored figure of destroying its garden. The air is filled with flying creatures and smoke, emphasizing the destruction. A young man shouts determinedly that he will not allow his home to be destroyed. A close-up shows a burnt hand from the wood armor, indicating recent conflict. The scene conveys a strong will to defend and the consequences of battle. A man speaks about converting empty space into a golem warehouse and hopes an untested plan will work. Shelves hold multiple golems, ready for action. He commands the golems to switch to full armor mode. A towering armored figure with a helmet-like head and layered plating stands prominently. Forest and rocks surround the figure, emphasizing its immense size. Mechanical design dominates the scene, hinting at power and defense. The figure exudes a strong presence in the natural environment. Gist: a large armored mech stands in a forest setting.